A human child stood at the center of the royal hatching chamber, his small fists clenched in defiance as giant scaled beings towered over him. The mighty dragon queen herself descending from her throne to approach the boy, the sole survivor of a devastating attack that had claimed the lives of everyone he had ever known. The queen has chosen a human instead of her own egg, the elder dragons whispered in disbelief, watching as she extended her massive clawed hand toward the child with unexpected gentleness. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I always love chatting with you, and it really helps support the channel. Also, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. The attack came without warning. The peaceful mining colony on Proxima B had been established for just under 15 years, a small but thriving community of 300 humans who had made the distant planet their home. They built their settlement in the shadow of what they called the Sleeping Mountains, a range of dormant volcanoes that provided both shelter and rich mineral deposits. 8-year-old Elias Mercer had never known Earth. He was born on Proxima B, the son of 2 geologists who had come to study the planet's unique composition. That fateful morning began like any other. Elias had been helping his father catalog rock samples while his mother was at the communications hub, sending their monthly report back to Earth. The community alarm blared without warning, a sound Elias had only heard during drills. But this time, his father's face drained of color. Through the reinforced windows of their lab, they watched as 3 sleek, obsidian vessels descended from the clouds, their hulls reflecting the orange light of Proxima Centauri. "Get to the emergency shelter," his father said, voice tense as he pushed Elias toward the door. "Now, Elias." Elias ran. The settlement became a chaos of screaming and explosions. The attackers were not like anything in the educational programs or history texts. They moved with fluid grace despite their massive size, their bodies covered in what looked like natural armor plates that shimmered with iridescent colors under the alien sun. Later, he would learn they were called the Vex, a mercenary species hired by corporations or governments for their brutal efficiency. The emergency shelter was a reinforced bunker beneath the colony's main administrative building. Elias made it inside just as the massive doors began to close automatically. He was the only one who reached it in time. Through a small monitoring screen, he watched in horror as the attack continued. The Vex were methodical, destroying infrastructure and hunting down colonists with precision. Within an hour, the settlement was silent except for the occasional explosion as damaged equipment gave way. Elias remained in the shelter for 3 days, surviving on emergency rations and recycled water, hoping for rescue. On the 4th day, the shelter's power began to fail. Warning lights flashed, and automated systems announced imminent life support failure. With no choice left, Elias emerged into the devastation of what had been his home. Bodies lay where they had fallen. Buildings smoldered. Equipment was destroyed beyond repair. The communications array that had been his mother's responsibility was now just twisted metal reaching pathetically toward the sky. Elias wandered through the ruins, numb with shock and grief, calling out occasionally though he knew no one would answer. On the 5th day after the attack, as Elias sat among the ruins of his family's quarters clutching his father's jacket around his small shoulders, the ground began to tremble. At first, he thought it was another attack, but the vibrations were different, rhythmic, like massive footsteps. He climbed to the roof of a partially collapsed building to see what was approaching. What he saw stole his breath away. From the direction of the Sleeping Mountains came creatures that could only be described as dragons. Massive, serpentine bodies moved with surprising grace across the barren landscape. Wings that spanned wider than the colony's largest buildings occasionally unfurled to catch thermal updrafts, lifting the creatures momentarily into the air before they settled back to the ground. Their scales caught the sunlight like millions of jewels, creating coronas of colored light around their bodies. Elias should have been terrified. Instead, he was transfixed. The dragons approached the ruined colony slowly, their movements deliberate. The largest among them, with scales that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue, came to a stop at the edge of the destruction. Its head, larger than the colony's transport vehicle, swung from side to side, taking in the devastation. Then its gaze fixed on Elias. The boy froze as the dragon's eyes, intelligent, ancient eyes that gleamed like molten gold, focused on him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, To Elias's astonishment, the dragon spoke. A survivor, it said, its voice resonating not through the air but directly in Elias's mind. Come forward, small one. Elias didn't question how he could understand the creature or how it was communicating with him. In the face of such an extraordinary being, such details seemed insignificant. Shakily, he climbed down from his perch and approached the waiting dragon. I am Maelora, the dragon communicated. Queen of the Draconin. This land belongs to my people, though we have slumbered long beneath the mountains your kind called dormant. We felt the attack. We felt the deaths. Elias stood before Maelora, a tiny figure before an immense presence. They killed everyone, he said, his voice small but steady. I'm the only one left. Maelora lowered her massive head until her eye was level with the boy. Through that golden iris, Elias saw compassion, anger, and something else, a calculating intelligence that seemed to be measuring him. What is your name, last human of this colony? She asked. Elias Mercer. Elias Mercer, she repeated, the name taking on a musical quality in her mental voice. You stand at a threshold. Behind you lies death. Before you lies uncertainty. The attackers will return to ensure their work is complete. They cannot know that the Draconin have awakened. Who were they? Elias asked, anger briefly overtaking his fear. Why did they do this? They are the Vex, hired killers, Maelora answered. As for why, her massive head turned toward the mountains. Your people discovered something they were not meant to find, something that has slept alongside us for millennia. Before Elias could ask what she meant, the ground trembled again as more dragons approached. They formed a semicircle behind their queen, their scales creating a dazzling display of colors under the alien sun. The council has assembled, Maelora told him. Come, your fate will be decided. Elias followed as Maelora led the procession back toward the mountains. As they traveled, he learned more about the Draconin. They were not native to Proxima B, but had come thousands of years ago when their homeworld began to die. They entered a state of hibernation, allowing their physical forms to adapt to the new planet, while their consciousness existed in a shared dreamscape they called the Weave. The human colony had settled unwittingly atop an ancient Draconin city. The mining operations had disturbed the chambers where the dragons slept, triggering their awakening. But something else had been disturbed as well, something the Draconin had been protecting. The entrance to the dragon city was a massive cave mouth in the side of the largest mountain. Inside, bioluminescent fungi provided soft blue light, revealing soaring ceilings and intricate carvings along the walls. The central chamber was vast enough to hold all the dragons comfortably, with a raised dais at its center. On this dais rested a single, massive egg. The egg stood taller than Elias, its shell an opalescent white that seemed to capture and reflect the blue light of the chamber. Thin veins of gold ran across its surface in patterns that reminded Elias of star maps. This is the last royal egg, Maelora explained as the dragons arranged themselves in a circle around the dais. Inside sleeps my heir, who will lead the Draconin when I return to the eternal weave. The egg was to hatch when we awakened, but something is wrong. It does not respond to our calls. Elias looked from the magnificent egg to the assembled dragons. Their expressions were difficult for him to read, but their postures conveyed concern and perhaps resignation. An elder dragon with scales the color of burnished copper spoke, his mental voice gravelly with age. The attack was not aimed at the human colony, but at us. The Vex were sent to ensure we never fully awakened. By whom? Elias asked. The architects, answered another dragon, this one smaller than the others, with scales that shifted between emerald and sapphire. An ancient race that sees themselves as the rightful shapers of galactic civilization. They have opposed the Draconin since before your species discovered fire. Maelora moved to stand beside the egg, placing one massive claw gently on its surface. The mining operation discovered one of the architect's monitoring stations. When they realized the Draconin still lived, they sent the Vex to eliminate any witnesses and damage our hibernation chambers. They have succeeded in part. Many of our kind will never awaken now. Elias felt a wave of grief that was not his own wash over him. The collected sorrow of the Draconin was overwhelming, and he staggered under its weight. I'm sorry, he said when he could speak again. My parents didn't know. None of us knew. Of course you didn't, Maelora said, her mental voice gentle. Your kind are young, curious. You explore without understanding the dangers that wait in the dark spaces between stars. The copper-scaled elder approached Elias, lowering his massive head to study the boy more closely. The question remains, what shall we do with this survivor? The Vex will return when they discover their mission was incomplete, and they will bring reinforcements, added another dragon. The architects will not risk the Draconin returning to the galactic stage. Melora's gaze remained fixed on Elias. There is another concern. My egg does not respond because it has been poisoned. The Vex deployed a toxin specifically designed to attack Draconin royal genetics. My heir is dying within the shell. A murmur of dismay rippled through the assembled dragons. Elias felt their collective despair as a physical pressure against his mind. Without a royal heir, the Draconin will fracture, the emerald-scaled dragon said. We cannot survive another interregnum. Melora's golden eyes never left Elias. Perhaps there is another way. The Copper Elder's head jerked up. Surely you do not suggest. I do, Melora interrupted. The ancient laws allow for adoption in times of necessity. It has been done before, though not with a species so different. The human child? The elder sounded incredulous. Melora, he is not of our kind. He cannot connect to the weave. He lacks our physical attributes, our lifespan, our inherent abilities. All of that can change, Melora replied calmly. The royal transformation is designed to enhance potential, not merely reinforce existing traits. His very difference may be our salvation. The architects would never anticipate such a move. The chamber fell silent as the dragons considered their queen's words. Elias stood still, not fully comprehending what was being discussed, but understanding that somehow, his future hung in the balance. Finally, the elder spoke again. It is your right as queen to choose, but I must voice my opposition. This has never been attempted with a mammalian species, let alone one so evolutionarily distant from our own. The process could kill him, or worse, create something neither human nor Draconin. I am aware of the risks, Melora said. She turned her attention fully to Elias. Child of Earth, do you understand what we discuss? Elias swallowed hard. Not really, he admitted. Something about making me like you? Melora's mental voice softened. In a sense, my egg, my natural heir, is dying. Without a royal successor, my people will fall into disarray when I eventually pass. I am proposing that you take that place, that you undergo a transformation to become capable of leading the Draconin. I would become a dragon? Elias asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and wonder. Not exactly, Melora explained. You would remain yourself, but changed, enhanced, able to access abilities currently beyond your comprehension. It would be painful. It would be irreversible. And there is no certainty of success. Elias looked around at the assembled dragons, their jewel-like scales reflecting the blue light of the cavern. Then he thought of the ruined colony, of his parents' bodies lying broken among the debris, of the silence where once there had been the sounds of a thriving community. What would happen to me if I say no? He asked quietly. The Copper Elder answered before Melora could speak. We would ensure your safety. When your people send rescue ships, as they eventually will, we would return you to them. And what would happen to you? To the dragons? Without an heir? The Elder's mental voice carried resignation. We would continue as long as possible. When Melora joins the eternal weave, we would likely splinter into factions. Eventually, the architects would find us divided and destroy us completely. Elias looked up at Melora. And if I say yes, then you face pain and transformation. You face a life unlike anything your kind has experienced. You face centuries, perhaps millennia, of existence. You face responsibility for an entire species. Her golden eyes seemed to peer into his very soul. But you would not face it alone. You would be my son, in every way that matters. Son. The word echoed in Elias's mind. His parents were gone. Everyone he had known was gone. Before him stood a being of incredible power and wisdom, offering him not just survival, but purpose. Will I forget? He asked, his voice breaking slightly. Will I forget my parents? My home? No, Melora answered firmly. Memory is sacred to the Draconin. Your past will remain yours, though it will eventually be viewed through the lens of a much longer existence. Elias took a deep breath. Fear and wonder battled within him, along with grief and a strange, unexpected feeling of hope. He thought of his mother's last words to him that morning. "Be brave, Starshine," a nickname she had given him because of his fascination with the night sky. "I'll do it," he said, his young voice steady despite everything. "I'll become your heir." A ripple of surprise, and something like respect, passed through the assembled dragons. Melora lowered her massive head until her snout nearly touched Elias's chest. "You show courage worthy of the Draconin," she said. "Come, we must prepare you for the transformation." The preparations took the rest of the day. Elias was led deeper into the mountain complex, through corridors that grew increasingly warm until they reached a chamber that glowed with orange light. At its center was a pool of what appeared to be molten metal, though it moved with an unnatural fluidity, occasionally forming shapes that almost seemed deliberate before collapsing back into formlessness. "The crucible of becoming," Melora explained. "It is not truly molten metal, though it appears so to your senses. It is a suspension of nanites, machines smaller than your cells, in a nutrient medium. They will rebuild you from within." Around the pool, dragons were busy preparing. Some used their claws with surprising dexterity to mix substances in large stone bowls. Others arranged crystals around the perimeter of the pool, each glowing with an inner light. "The risk remains significant," the Copper Elder said, appearing at Melora's side. "His physiology is not designed for this process." "Which is why we will modify the process," Melora replied. "Terex, bring the genetic template." The emerald-scaled dragon approached, carrying something cupped carefully between his front claws. As he drew closer, Elias saw it was a small fragment of shell from the royal egg. "We will use the template from my original heir to guide the transformation," Melora explained to Elias. "This will increase the chances of success." Elias nodded, though fear was beginning to overtake his earlier resolve. The reality of what he had agreed to was sinking in. He would be changed, fundamentally and forever. He would never be human again, at least not entirely. As if sensing his thoughts, Melora's voice came gently into his mind. "Second thoughts are natural, Elias Mercer. Even now, you may choose differently." Elias looked up at her, then around at the other dragons. Despite their alien appearance, he sensed no malice from them, only concern, hope, and a deep sadness for what had been lost. "No," he said finally. "I want to do this. I need to do this." He didn't fully understand why he felt so certain, but the feeling was unshakable. Melora nodded, a surprisingly human gesture from such an alien being. "Then we begin. Remove your coverings and enter the pool. The process works best with direct contact." Elias hesitated only briefly before removing his dirty clothes. Modesty seemed a trivial concern in the face of what was to come. Naked, he approached the edge of the pool. The liquid, if it could be called that, gave off a heat that was intense but not unbearable. Up close, he could see that it wasn't truly still. Millions of tiny movements disturbed its surface, as though countless microscopic creatures were swimming just beneath. "It will hurt," Melora warned one last time. "But I will be with you, in your mind. You will not face the pain alone." Elias nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped into the crucible of becoming. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. The liquid engulfed him, far denser than water, pulling him down until he was completely submerged. It forced itself into his mouth, his nose, his ears, his eyes, every orifice and pore. He tried to scream, but couldn't. The substance filled his lungs, replacing air with burning agony. And then, remarkably, he could breathe again. The liquid oxygenated his blood directly, more efficiently than air ever could. The pain remained, but the panic of drowning subsided. True to her word, Melora's presence filled his mind. She didn't attempt to diminish the pain. That, she explained, was impossible, but she provided context for it. Each wave of agony had meaning. His bones being reinforced with materials stronger than diamond. His muscles being rewoven with fibers that could withstand stresses that would tear steel. His nervous system being augmented to process information at speeds no human brain could match. Time lost meaning. Elias existed in a state of transformation, aware only of pain, Melora's steady presence, and the gradual, fundamental changes to his body. His consciousness expanded in ways he couldn't have comprehended before. He began to sense the weave that Melora had described, the collective consciousness of the Draconin, a vast network of thought and memory stretching back millennia. After what might have been hours or days, the pain began to subside. Elias felt himself rising to the surface of the pool, no longer pulled down by the dense liquid. Hands, not human hands, but the careful claws of dragons, lifted him from the crucible and placed him on a bed of soft material. "Open your eyes, my son," Melora's voice came, both in his mind and, for the first time, in his ears as actual sound. Elias opened his eyes and gasped. The world looked different, sharper, more vibrant. He could see details he had never noticed before, could perceive spectrums of light previously invisible to human eyes. The dragons around him glowed with auras of energy that shifted with their movements, and, he somehow knew, their emotions. Slowly, he sat up and looked down at himself. His body was still recognizably human in its basic form. 2 arms, 2 legs, a torso, a head. But the similarities ended there. His skin had changed, now covered in fine scales that caught the light like opals. His fingers ended in small, sharp claws. When he reached up to touch his face, he felt ridges where his brow had been, and when his tongue explored his mouth, he discovered sharp teeth. "What?" His voice caught, unfamiliar in his new throat. He tried again. "What am I now?" "You are the first of a new kind," Melora answered. "Neither fully human nor fully Draconin, but a bridge between worlds. The Nanites will continue to refine your form as you grow, responding to need and circumstance." Elias stood carefully, testing his new body. He felt stronger, more balanced. Energy seemed to hum beneath his scaled skin. When he took a step, his movements were fluid in a way they had never been before. "The transformation appears successful," the Copper Elder said, surprise evident in his mental voice. "I would not have believed it possible." "He is young," Melora replied. "Youth brings adaptability, and humans are more resilient than you give them credit for, Draconis." "What happens now?" Elias asked. "Now," Melora said, "you begin to learn what it means to be Draconin royalty. And we prepare for war. The Vex will return, and behind them, the architects will be watching. We must be ready." As if summoned by her words, a dragon Elias hadn't seen before rushed into the chamber. This one was smaller than the others, with scales the color of polished silver. "My queen." The newcomer's mental voice was tense with urgency. "Our sentries report multiple ships entering the system. The designs match those of the Vex vessels that attacked the human colony." Melora's golden eyes narrowed. "Sooner than expected. They must have detected the energy from the crucible." She turned to Elias. "Are you strong enough to stand with us?" Elias felt fear, but it was different now. Sharper, clearer, untainted by the helplessness he had felt during the attack on the colony. He straightened his back and met Melora's gaze. "I'm ready," he said, and was surprised by the conviction in his voice. "Tell me what to do." The Draconin moved with surprising speed for beings of their size. Within minutes, the entire mountain complex was mobilizing for battle. Elias was quickly outfitted in light armor made from a material he didn't recognize, not metal or fabric, but something in between that shifted slightly under his touch, adjusting to fit his new form perfectly. "This is living armor," explained Terex, the emerald-scaled dragon who seemed to have appointed himself as Elias's guide. "It will grow and change as you do, providing protection while allowing freedom of movement." Elias ran his clawed fingers over the smooth surface of the armor. It felt warm to the touch, almost as if it had a pulse. "Does it have a mind of its own?" "Not a mind as you would understand it," Terex replied. "But it has instincts. It will react to protect you from harm, even if you are unaware of the danger." They emerged from the mountain onto a high plateau. Below, the ruined human colony was visible in the distance. Above, the sky was dotted with approaching shapes, the Vex ships, more numerous than before. Melora stood at the edge of the plateau, her massive wings half unfurled. She looked magnificent and terrible, a creature of legend preparing for war. When she spoke, her mental voice reached all the gathered Draconin. "The enemy approaches, thinking us weak and unprepared. They believe they have dealt us a critical blow by poisoning the royal egg. They do not know that we have already secured our future." She turned to look at Elias, who stood small but straight-backed among the dragons. "They do not know that the Draconin have found a new strength in an unexpected place." A roar of approval rose from the assembled dragons, the sound reverberating through the mountains. Elias felt their collective determination wash over him through the weave, strengthening his resolve. "What can I do?" he asked Melora. "I'm not ready to fight." "No," she agreed. "Your transformation is too recent, your abilities untested. But you can observe and learn. Stay close to me." The Vex ships were clearly visible now, their black hulls reflecting the light of Proxima Centauri as they descended toward the plateau. There were at least a dozen vessels, each large enough to hold numerous troops. "They come in greater numbers this time," observed Draconis, the Copper Elder. "They must have reported signs of our awakening." "Let them come," Melora replied, her mental voice cold with anger. "They will learn what it means to attack the Draconin in their home." The lead Vex ship hovered above the plateau, engines roaring. A hatch opened in its underside, and figures began to descend on gravity platforms, the same armored beings that had attacked the human colony. They were tall, with 4 arms and elongated heads, their bodies covered in segmented armor that resembled insect carapaces. Their leader stepped forward, its face hidden behind a featureless mask. When it spoke, its voice was a harsh, mechanical sound. "Draconin survivors," it said in a language that Elias somehow understood, though he had never heard it before. "By order of the Galactic Architectural Authority, you are commanded to surrender and submit to controlled extinction. Resistance will result in immediate termination." Melora's mental laugh was like thunder. Controlled extinction? Is that what they call genocide now? She stepped forward, her massive form dwarfing the Vex commander. "Return to your masters with this message. The Draconin do not surrender. We do not submit. And we do not forget those who wrong us." The Vex commander's posture stiffened. "Then you choose termination." It raised one of its 4 arms, signaling to the ships above. What happened next occurred so quickly that Elias could barely follow it. The Draconin moved as one, some taking to the air with powerful beats of their wings while others charged directly at the Vex forces. Melora remained beside Elias, her massive body shielding him from the conflict. The Vex deployed weapons unlike anything Elias had seen. Beams of energy that distorted the air, projectiles that split into multiple seeking fragments, fields of force that attempted to immobilize the dragons. But the Draconin had weapons of their own. Some breathed streams of what looked like fire but behaved like liquid, flowing around barriers to engulf Vex soldiers. Others projected fields of energy that disrupted the Vex weapons, rendering them useless. Still others fought with physical strength, their claws and tails devastating against the armored mercenaries. Through the weave, Elias could sense the battle strategies, the coordinated movements of the Draconin that made them far more effective than their numbers would suggest. He could also sense the surprise and growing fear of the Vex as they realized they had grossly underestimated their opposition. "They expected us to be weakened from hibernation," Melora explained to him as they watched the battle unfold. "They did not account for the strength we draw from the weave, or the power of our righteous anger." A Vex soldier broke through the Draconin line, charging directly toward Melora and Elias. Without thinking, Elias raised his hand in a warding gesture. To his shock, a pulse of energy erupted from his palm, striking the Vex soldier and sending it tumbling backward. "The royal abilities manifest already," Melora said, approval in her mental voice. "Impressive for one so newly transformed." Elias stared at his hand in wonder. "How did I do that?" "Intent and will," Melora replied. "The nanites in your body respond to your thoughts, channeling energy in ways your human form could never have managed. With training, you will learn to control and direct these abilities with precision." The battle continued to rage across the plateau. Though outnumbered, the Draconin were clearly gaining the upper hand. The Vex began to retreat toward their ships, their ordered formations breaking down into desperate flight. "They run," Draconis announced, landing beside Melora with blood, or something like it, dripping from his claws. "Shall we pursue?" Melora considered for a moment. "No. Let some escape to carry word back to the architects. Let them know that the Draconin are awakened and stronger than ever." Her golden gaze shifted to Elias. "Let them wonder what new weapon we have found." As the last of the Vex ships disappeared into the upper atmosphere, the Draconin gathered around their queen and her new heir. Many were wounded, but none had fallen. Through the weave, Elias could feel their triumph, their relief, and their growing curiosity about him. "The first battle is won," Melora announced. "But the war has only begun. The architects will not accept this defeat. They will send worse than the Vex next time. And we will be ready," Elias said, surprising himself with his confidence. The words felt right, as though he had been born to speak them. Melora looked down at him with what he now recognized as pride. "Yes, my son, we will be ready. And you will stand with us, not as a refugee we have taken in, but as the future of our kind." As the Draconin returned to their mountain city to tend their wounds and prepare for the battles to come, Elias walked beside Melora, his new form moving with a grace he was still becoming accustomed to. He thought of his parents, of the colony that had been his home, of the life he might have had if the Vex had never come. But he also thought of the future opening before him, centuries of life, abilities beyond human imagination, and a people who had accepted him as their own. He had lost everything, but in that loss, he had found something new, something extraordinary. "I will make you proud," he promised Melora silently, knowing she could hear his thoughts. "You already have," came her reply, warm with affection. "You already have." 10 years passed in the mountain city of the Draconin. 10 years of learning, training, and preparation. 10 years of transformation, both physical and mental. Elias Mercer was 18 now, though he looked like no 18-year-old human in history. He stood taller than the tallest human, his body lean and powerful, covered in opalescent scales that shifted color with his emotions. His face retained some human features. Eyes, though now with vertical pupils, a nose, though flatter and with wider nostrils, a mouth, though filled with teeth sharp enough to tear through metal. A crest of rigid scales ran from his forehead down his spine, rising and falling with his moods. Small wings had begun to develop from his shoulder blades, not yet large enough for flight, but growing steadily. The Draconin called him Eliesarin, adding the suffix that denoted royal lineage. To Melora, he remained simply her son. Each day began with combat training. Elias moved through the massive training chamber, facing off against 3 Draconin warriors simultaneously. They did not hold back. At Melora's insistence, his training had always been realistic, dangerous. The theory was simple: survive the training, survive the war. "Your left flank is open," called Terex, who had become Elias's primary combat instructor over the years. The emerald-scaled dragon lunged, his tail whipping toward Elias's exposed side. Elias twisted, faster than any human could move, catching Terex's tail and using its momentum to throw himself into the air. His partial wings spread, giving him enough lift to somersault over the second attacker. As he landed, he thrust his palm forward, releasing a controlled burst of energy that knocked the third dragon backward. "Better," Terex acknowledged, recovering his balance. "But still predictable. In real combat, I'd be dead," Elias finished for him, having heard the phrase countless times. "I know. Enough for today," came Melora's voice as she entered the training chamber. Over the decade, Elias had learned to distinguish between vocal speech and mental communication. The Draconin used both, often simultaneously, creating layers of meaning impossible to convey in a single mode. The training dragons bowed to their queen and departed, leaving Elias alone with his adoptive mother. Though he had grown significantly, Melora still dwarfed him. Her scales, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue, gleamed in the chamber's light. "You improve daily," she said, a note of pride in her voice. "Soon you will be ready for the ascension." The ascension, the final stage of his transformation, when he would fully come into his royal powers. Elias had been both anticipating and dreading it for years. It would mark his official recognition as heir to the Draconin throne, but it would also sever the last threads connecting him to his human origins. "Am I ready?" he asked, meeting Melora's golden eyes. "No one is ever truly ready," she replied honestly. "But the time approaches regardless. The architects grow bolder. Our scouts report increased activity throughout the sector. They are preparing something significant. For 10 years, the conflict had simmered without boiling over. After the initial battle at the plateau, the architects had switched tactics, relying on proxies and sabotage rather than direct confrontation. The Draconin had used the time to awaken more of their kind from hibernation, strengthening their numbers and fortifying their mountain city. Have they discovered what I am yet? Elias asked, following Melora as she led him from the training chamber toward the central hall. They suspect, Melora answered. Their spies have caught glimpses, but they cannot comprehend what they see. A being neither human nor Draconin, wielding powers that should be impossible for either. You have become their nightmare, Eliasarin, the unknown variable in their carefully calculated universe. They entered the central hall, where the Draconin Council had gathered. 10 dragons, each representing a different lineage, arranged around the circular chamber. The atmosphere was tense. Elias could feel it through the weave, the shared consciousness that connected all Draconin, and now, him as well. Draconis, the Copper Elder who had initially opposed Elias's adoption, rose as they entered. Though still skeptical at times, he had become one of Elias's most valued mentors, teaching him Draconin history and philosophy. The scouts have returned from the outer system, Draconis announced without preamble. The news is grave. The architects have deployed a world breaker. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the assembled dragons. Elias felt their fear spike in the weave, sharp as broken glass against his consciousness. Explain, he said, directing the question to Draconis but opening his mind to any who wished to answer. It was Terex who responded, having entered behind them. A world breaker is the architect's ultimate weapon, a fusion of technology and engineered bioforms, designed to render planets uninhabitable. They have used them only twice in recorded history, both times against civilizations that directly challenged their authority. How does it work? Elias asked, his tactical mind, honed through years of Draconin training, already seeking weaknesses, countermeasures. It seeds the atmosphere with nanophages, Terex explained. Microscopic machines that break down complex molecules, including those that make up living tissue. Everything simply comes apart. The process takes approximately 1 standard month from deployment to completion. And they've deployed one here, at Proxima B. Elias's voice was steady despite the horror of what he was hearing. It entered the outer system 3 days ago, Draconis confirmed. At its current velocity, it will reach planetary orbit in approximately 2 weeks. Melora's tail lashed, the only outward sign of her anger. They intend to sterilize the entire planet rather than risk the Draconin returning to galactic affairs. Typical architect thinking. If they cannot control something, they destroy it. Can we evacuate? Elias asked, looking around at the council. A dragon with scales like burnished gold, Celera of the Western Peaks, shook her massive head. Our ships have been dormant for millennia. Many are beyond repair. Those that might still function could carry perhaps a third of our population at most. And the architects would hunt us wherever we fled, added another counselor. This is not merely about Proxima B. It is about eliminating the Draconin as a species. Elias paced the center of the chamber, his mind racing. The Draconin watched him, their golden eyes tracking his movements. Over the years, they had learned to respect his uniquely human perspective, the way his mind found connections and possibilities that their more ancient thinking sometimes missed. The world breaker, he said finally. It's a machine, yes? Not a living entity. A hybrid, Terex clarified. Part machine, part engineered bioform. It follows program directives, but can adapt to changing circumstances. Can it be destroyed before it deploys the nanophages? Theoretically, Melora said, her voice thoughtful, but it will be heavily defended. The architects do not leave their superweapons vulnerable. Elias continued pacing, his crest rising and falling as he thought. Then he stopped abruptly, turning to face the council. What if we don't fight the world breaker directly, he suggested. What if we use the architects' own tactics against them? Explain, Draconis prompted, leaning forward with interest. The architects rely on proxies, the Vex and others, to do their dirty work. They manipulate from the shadows, rarely engaging directly. Elias's eyes gleamed with growing excitement. What if we created our own proxy? Something the architects would never expect. And what proxy could possibly stand against a world breaker? Celera asked skeptically. Elias smiled, revealing his sharp teeth. Humanity. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of vocal objections and mental exclamations. Melora raised her wings for silence. which came gradually as the counselors regained their composure. Elaborate, she instructed Elias. For 10 years, Earth has believed the Proxima B colony was destroyed by unknown aggressors, Elias explained. My people, my former people, have never learned the truth about the Draconin or the architects. But what if they did? What if we contacted Earth and revealed everything? To what end? Draconis asked, his mental tone guarded. Humans are numerous but technologically primitive compared to the architects. They would be slaughtered. Primitive, yes, but innovative, Elias countered. And completely outside the architect's control structure. Earth isn't part of their carefully managed galactic order. Humans don't play by their rules because they don't even know the rules exist. You suggest we use your former species as cannon fodder, Celera said bluntly. Sacrifice them to save ourselves. No, Elias replied firmly. I suggest we forge an alliance. The architects fear the Draconin because of our potential to disrupt their control. Imagine their fear if they face two independent species working together, especially when one of those species has produced someone like me. He gestured to his hybrid form, the living proof that humanity and Draconin could be more than the sum of their parts. The risk to your people would be considerable, Melora observed, though Elias could sense her interest through the weave. Why would they agree? Because the architects won't stop with Proxima B, Elias said grimly. Once they've eliminated us, they'll turn their attention to Earth. Humans are too unpredictable, too innovative to fit into their perfect order. It's only a matter of time. Silence fell over the council chamber as the dragons considered his words. Elias waited, knowing better than to rush them. Draconin deliberations could seem maddeningly slow to human perception, but their decisions, once made, were executed with impressive speed and unity. Finally, Draconis spoke. The suggestion has merit, but a critical flaw. How do we contact Earth? Our long-range communication systems were damaged during hibernation, and the human colony's array was destroyed in the initial attack. Not entirely, Elias replied. I've been studying the ruins for years. The main array was destroyed, yes, but the emergency backup system was buried under debris. With Draconin technology and my knowledge of human systems, I believe we can repair it sufficiently to send a message. Even if we could, Terex interjected, a message would take years to reach Earth at light speed. The world breaker will arrive in 2 weeks. Not if we use the fold, Elias said quietly. Another stir ran through the council. The fold, the Draconin's greatest secret, a method of manipulating space-time to transmit information instantaneously across vast distances. It was technology the Draconin had possessed before their exodus to Proxima B, technology the architects had thought lost during the hibernation. You were not to know of the fold until after your ascension, Melora said, her mental tone a complex mixture of surprise and approval. How did you learn of it? Elias met her gaze steadily. The weave contains many secrets, Mother. When I dream deeply enough, I access memories not my own. Ancient memories. The royal lineage, Draconis murmured. The transformation has given him access to ancestral knowledge. Remarkable. Can you operate the fold? Melora asked directly. No, Elias admitted. I understand the principles, but the practical operation is beyond me. That's why I need your help. All of you. I can repair the human transmitter. You can connect it to the fold. Together, we can reach Earth before the world breaker arrives. Melora looked around at the council, gauging their reactions through the weave. After a moment, she nodded decisively. We will attempt this plan, she declared. Terex, assemble a team to accompany Eliesarin to the human colony ruins. Celera, begin preparations to activate the fold. The rest of you, prepare our defenses in case this fails. We still have 2 weeks. We will use them well. As the council dispersed to their various tasks, Melora held Elias back with a gentle touch of her claw on his shoulder. Your plan is bold, she said when they were alone. And dangerous. The architects will detect our use of the fold. I know, Elias replied. But we're out of alternatives. There is one, Melora said carefully. We could accelerate your ascension. With your full powers awakened, you might be able to confront the world breaker directly. Elias felt a chill despite the warmth of the chamber. The ascension was not without risk, particularly an accelerated one. Several times over the years, Melora had explained that his hybrid physiology made the process unpredictable. At worst, it could kill him or leave him a mindless husk. Would that work? He asked, keeping his voice neutral. Perhaps, Maelora admitted. But the risk would be entirely yours. I will not command it. Elias considered for a moment, then shook his head. Let's try my plan first. The ascension can be our final option. Melora's golden eyes studied him. As you wish. But prepare yourself. If your plan fails, we may have no choice. The journey to the colony ruins took less than a day. Elias traveled with Terex and 3 other Draconin, all warriors skilled in both combat and technical matters. They flew low over the landscape, Elias secured in a harness on Terex's back, his own wings still insufficient for independent flight. The ruins looked much as they had 10 years ago, though nature had begun to reclaim some structures. Vegetation native to Proxima B, hardy, red-leaved plants that could photosynthesize under the planet's dim sun, had crept over collapsed buildings and rusted equipment. Elias felt a pang of emotion as they landed at the settlement's edge. Though his memories of his human life had taken on a dreamlike quality over the years, standing among the remnants of the colony brought them into sharp focus. Somewhere beneath the rubble lay the bodies of his parents, of friends and neighbors, all lost to the Vex attack. Are you well? Terex asked, sensing his distress through the weave. I'm fine, Elias replied, mastering his emotions. Let's find the emergency array. The backup communications system had been housed in a reinforced bunker beneath the colony's main administrative building. The building itself was little more than a heap of rubble now, but Elias remembered its layout perfectly. He directed the Draconin to begin clearing debris from what had once been the east entrance. As they worked, Elias's enhanced senses detected movement at the perimeter of the ruins. He signaled silently to Terex, who immediately alerted the other dragons through the weave. Vex Scout, Terex confirmed after a moment, his superior vision identifying the figure moving stealthily through the collapsed structures, probably monitoring the ruins for any sign of our activity. Can we capture it without raising an alarm? Elias asked. Terex considered, then nodded. Sathik is our best hunter. He can move unseen even among his own kind. The smallest of their group, a dragon with scales the color of desert sand, slipped away without a sound. 10 minutes later, he returned, dragging an unconscious Vex soldier. The alien mercenary was secured with restraints improvised from its own equipment. It was alone, Sathik reported, but it would have been expected to report in eventually. We have perhaps 3 hours before its absence is noticed. Then we work quickly, Elias decided. Let's finish clearing the entrance. With the Draconin's strength, they soon exposed the bunker's reinforced door. Though the electronic lock had long since failed, Elias's enhanced strength was sufficient to force the mechanism. The door groaned open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. There should be emergency power cells, Elias said, stepping into the darkness. His vision, adapted during his transformation, had no difficulty penetrating the gloom. If they're intact, we can power up the system long enough to interface with the fold. The emergency array was where he remembered it, a compact communications system designed to function independently of the colony's main power grid. To his relief, the power cells showed minimal degradation when he checked them. It can work, he announced to the waiting dragons. But I'll need components from the Vex Scouts' equipment. Their communication technology is more advanced than what we had here. Terex nodded to Sathik, who began carefully disassembling the unconscious Vex gear. Meanwhile, Elias and the other dragons set up the array, connecting the ancient power cells and testing systems that had lain dormant for a decade. What message will you send? Terex asked as they worked. Elias paused, considering. The truth, or enough of it to motivate Earth to action. I'll warn them about the architects, about the threat to both our peoples. I'll tell them about the Draconin. He hesitated. And about me. You realize what that means, Terex said quietly. Even if they come, even if they help us defeat the World Breaker, you can never return to them. You are no longer human. I know, Elias replied, his voice steady despite the weight of that knowledge. I made my choice 10 years ago. I don't regret it. The Vex Scout began to stir as they completed their preparations. Elias approached it cautiously, studying the alien mercenary. Like all Vex, it had 4 arms and an elongated head, its face concealed behind a featureless mask. It's waking, he informed the others. We need to finish quickly. The array is ready, reported one of the dragons. But we still need to link it to the fold. That requires a royal presence. Elias turned to Terex. Can you establish a temporary link to Melora through the weave? Strong enough for her to direct the fold through me? Theoretically, Terex said, his mental tone dubious. But it would strain your consciousness severely. Your hybrid mind isn't fully adapted to such deep weave connections. We don't have a choice, Elias insisted. The Vex will report our presence soon. We need to send the message now. Terex hesitated, then nodded. Stand beside the array and open your mind fully. I will establish the connection. Elias positioned himself at the communications console, placing his scaled hands on the transmitter interfaces. He closed his eyes and opened his mind, dropping the barriers he normally maintained between his consciousness and the weave. The rush of contact was overwhelming. Suddenly, he wasn't just connected to Terex and the other dragons present, but to the entire Draconin collective consciousness. Thousands of minds touched his, some curious, others concerned, all focused on the task at hand. And then Melora was there, her mental presence immense and ancient, filling his awareness. Through her, he sensed the fold, a technology so advanced it bordered on the mystical, a way of bending the very fabric of reality to transmit information across the void instantly. Focus, my son. Melora's voice came, distant yet clear. Direct your message through me. I will channel it through the fold. Elias concentrated, forming the message in his mind with perfect clarity. Images of the Vex attack, of the Draconin awakening, of his own transformation. Knowledge of the architects and their plans. Warning of the approaching world breaker. A plea for alliance, for humanity to join forces with the Draconin against a common threat. The strain was tremendous. Elias felt as though his mind was being stretched across light years, pulled thin to the point of breaking. Blood, darker and thicker than human blood, began to trickle from his nose and ears as the pressure built. Almost there, Melora encouraged. Hold the connection. With a final surge of will, Elias pushed the message through. He felt the fold activate, felt space-time twist and bend around his consciousness. For an instant, he was everywhere and nowhere. His awareness spread across the vast distance between Proxima b and Earth. Then the connection broke, and he collapsed to the floor of the bunker. When he regained consciousness, he was being carried through the air, secured once more in the harness on Terex's back. The dragon was flying at top speed, the others flanking him protectively. Did it work? Elias asked, his voice weak. The message was sent, Terex confirmed. Whether it was received, we cannot know yet. The Vex. It escaped during the confusion after you collapsed. By now, it has surely reported our activities. We must return to the mountain city immediately. Elias nodded weakly, conserving his strength. The use of the fold had drained him more than he'd anticipated. His hybrid body, remarkable as it was, still had limitations. They reached the mountain city to find it on high alert. Dragons patrolled the skies above the entrance, while others worked to reinforce the defenses. Melora met them in the central chamber, her expression grave. The architects have accelerated the Worldbreaker's approach, she announced without preamble. It will reach planetary orbit in 3 days, not 2 weeks as originally estimated. 3 days? Elias repeated, dismayed. That's not enough time for Earth to respond, even if they received our message. Precisely, Melora agreed. The architects must have detected our use of the fold. They know we've reached out for help and are determined to eliminate us before it can arrive. Then we have no choice, Elias said, meeting her golden eyes steadily. We need to proceed with the ascension. Melora studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Rest tonight. Recover your strength. The ascension will begin tomorrow at dawn. That night, Elias stood on a high balcony carved into the mountainside, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world of his birth, now his only hope for salvation. Had his message reached them? Would they respond? Or would they dismiss it as a hoax, a delusion, a trick? You should be resting, came Draconis' voice as the copper elder joined him on the balcony. I couldn't sleep, Elias admitted. Too much on my mind. Understandable, Draconis said. The ascension is not a trivial matter, even for one born to it. For you. He trailed off. You still have doubts, Elias observed. About me? About what I am. Draconis was silent for a moment. Not doubts, he finally replied. Concerns. You have exceeded all expectations, Eliasarin. You have embraced our ways, our culture, our very being. But the ascension will demand more than adaptation. It will require transformation at the deepest level, the final surrender of whatever remains of your humanity. What if I need both? Elias asked quietly. What if my humanity is what makes me valuable to the Draconin? My difference, not my similarity. Draconis considered this. An interesting perspective. Traditionally, the ascension removes such impurities. But your case is unprecedented. Perhaps the outcome will be equally so. They stood in companionable silence for a time, watching the stars. Finally, Elias spoke again. If I don't survive tomorrow, you will, Draconis interrupted firmly. But if I don't, Elias persisted, I want you to know that I'm grateful. For everything. For the second chance at life. For the family I found here. The old dragon's eyes softened. It is we who should be grateful, young one. You have brought something to the Draconin that we had lost during our long sleep. Perspective. Adaptability. Hope. He placed a massive claw gently on Elias's shoulder. Now rest. Tomorrow will demand all your strength. The ascension chamber was deep within the mountain, far below even the crucible where Elias had undergone his initial transformation. The air here was thick with ancient power, charged with energies that made his scales tingle and his developing wings twitch involuntarily. The chamber itself was circular, with a domed ceiling covered in luminescent crystals that pulsed slowly, like heartbeats. At the center was a raised platform surrounded by 7 pillars of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The entire Draconin Council had assembled, along with Terex and other dragons who had become important in Elias's life over the past decade. Melora stood at the head of the platform, her scales gleaming more vibrantly than usual, her presence in the weave a beacon of power and authority. Eliasarin, she intoned formally as Elias approached the platform. You come seeking the ascension, the final transformation that will confirm you as royal heir to the Draconin legacy. Are you prepared for what this entails? I am, Elias replied, his voice steady despite the fear fluttering in his chest. The ascension will change you in ways you cannot anticipate, Melora continued. It will grant you power beyond your current understanding. It will connect you to the lineage of all who have ruled before. And it will set you apart, forever, from what you once were. I understand, Elias said. Then approach the center and kneel. Elias stepped onto the platform and knelt before Melora. The stone beneath his knees was warm, almost alive, pulsing in rhythm with the crystals overhead. Melora raised her wings, spanning the width of the chamber. The other dragons did the same, creating a canopy of scaled membranes that caught and reflected the light from the crystals. From the depths of time, we call upon the wisdom of our ancestors, Melora began, her voice resonating throughout the chamber. From the vastness of space, we draw the energies that sustain our kind. From the weave that binds us, we summon the knowledge of ages. As she spoke, the air in the chamber seemed to thicken, to take on weight and substance. The crystals pulsed faster, their light intensifying until it was almost painful to behold. Eliasarin, once Elias Mercer, child of Earth, son of my choosing, Melora continued, placing a claw on his head. Open yourself to the ascension. Accept the final transformation. Become what you are destined to be. The energy that surged through Elias at her touch was beyond anything he had experienced. It was the crucible multiplied 1,000-fold, the fold connection amplified beyond measure. It was pain and ecstasy, dissolution and rebirth, all simultaneously. His body arched backward, wings spreading fully for the first time, growing and strengthening even as the energy poured through him. His scales hardened and brightened, taking on a luster that rivaled Melora's own. His crest extended, becoming more pronounced and defined. And his mind expanded beyond the boundaries of his skull, beyond the confines of his identity. Suddenly, he wasn't just Elias, wasn't just Eliasarin. He was all who had come before, all who might come after. He was the sum of Draconin royalty throughout history, their knowledge and experience flooding into him in a torrent of memory and power. Yet, through it all, a core of humanity remained. That perspective Draconis had spoken of, the unique viewpoint that came from straddling 2 worlds, 2 species, 2 ways of being. It wasn't erased but enhanced, becoming a lens through which he could interpret and utilize the vast knowledge now available to him. The process seemed to last both an instant and an eternity. When it finally subsided, Elias rose to his feet, taller now, stronger, his presence in the weave exponentially more powerful. His wings spread behind him, fully formed and functional, shimmering with opalescent colors that shifted and flowed across their surface. Melora looked at him with pride and wonder. "It is done," she said simply. "You are ascended." Elias opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, an alarm sounded throughout the mountain city, a deep, resonant tone that Elias had never heard before. "The World Breaker," Draconis announced grimly. "It has entered the atmosphere." Elias extended his awareness through the weave, connecting to the sentries positioned around the planet. Through their eyes, he saw it, a massive construct, part machine, part organism, descending through Proxima B's atmosphere, trailing clouds of golden particles. "The nanophages," Terex explained, seeing his focus. "It's already deploying them." "How long?" Elias asked, his voice deeper and more resonant than before. "At this dispersal rate, global saturation will occur in approximately 12 hours, one of the council dragons replied. "Once that happens, all complex life on the planet will begin to break down, including the Draconin," Melora added solemnly. "Our scales provide some resistance, but not immunity." Elias considered for a moment, testing his new abilities, feeling the power that flowed through him. The ascension had granted him access to capabilities he had only theorized about before. "Perhaps I can stop it," he said with quiet certainty. "Alone?" Draconis questioned. "Even ascended, you would be facing the Architect's most powerful weapon." "Not alone," Elias replied. "I'll need volunteers, the strongest flyers among you. And I'll need access to the Royal Armory." Melora nodded. "Whatever you require is yours. What is your plan?" "The World Breaker is powerful but not invulnerable," Elias explained. "Its defensive systems are designed to repel conventional attacks, energy weapons, projectiles, even most telepathic assaults. But the Draconin have something the Architects don't fully understand. The weave," Terex realized. "You intend to use our collective consciousness against it." "Exactly," Elias confirmed. "The World Breaker is part biological. If we can establish a connection to those components through the weave, we can disrupt its functions from within. Such a connection would require physical contact," Draconis pointed out. "Getting close enough to touch the World Breaker would be nearly suicidal. Which is why I'll need the royal armor," Elias said. "And why I'll need to be the one to make contact. My hybrid nature gives me an advantage. The World Breaker's sensors are calibrated for pure Draconin energy signatures. Mine is different." Melora studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head. "Very well. Prepare quickly. Time is against us." The royal armor was unlike anything Elias had worn before. Made of the same living material as his training gear, but infinitely more advanced, it adapted instantly to his ascended form, covering him from neck to toe in a second skin of midnight blue with golden accents. It left his wings free, enhancing rather than restricting his movement. "This will provide some protection against the nanophages," Terex explained as he helped Elias secure the final components. "But not indefinitely. You must complete your task within 1 hour of exposure, or the breakdown will begin." Elias nodded, testing his movement in the armor. It felt like a natural extension of his body, responsive to his slightest thought. "And the weapon?" Terex handed him what appeared to be a simple staff of the same light-absorbing material as the pillars in the ascension chamber. "The Void Spear," he said reverently. "A royal weapon passed down through generations. It can disrupt any energy field, penetrate any barrier. Use it to breach the World Breaker's outer hull and establish physical contact with its biological components." Elias took the spear, feeling it adjust to his grip, becoming an extension of his will. "Thank you." Outside the mountain city, a strike team of 12 dragons, the fastest and most agile flyers among the Draconin, waited for him. They too wore armor, though less elaborate than his own, designed to protect them from the nanophages long enough to complete their mission. Melora stood at the entrance to the mountain, her expression solemn. "The World Breaker has positioned itself in the upper atmosphere, directly above the former human colony," she informed them. It appears to be using the ruins as a reference point for its dispersal pattern. Fitting, Elias said grimly. The architects complete what the Vex began. He turned to the assembled strike team. Our plan is simple but dangerous. We approach from multiple vectors to divide the Worldbreaker's defensive attention. I will attempt to breach its hull and establish a weave connection to its biological components. Once connected, I'll need all of you to channel your consciousness through me, a reverse of the fold connection we attempted earlier. The combined pressure should overwhelm its systems. The dragons nodded, their determination evident in the weave. They understood the risks. They accepted them. Elias turned back to Melora. If this fails, it will not fail, she interrupted, echoing Draconis' words from the previous night. But if complications arise, we have prepared an evacuation for as many as our remaining ships can carry. And you? Melora's golden eyes met his. A queen remains with her world until the end. But you have given us hope where there was none. For that alone, you have more than fulfilled your role as heir. Elias bowed his head in acknowledgement, then straightened. It's time. With a powerful beat of his wings that had been merely vestigial appendages the day before, he launched himself into the sky. The strike team followed, their massive forms rising around him in a protective formation. They ascended rapidly through Proxima B's atmosphere, climbing toward the Worldbreaker's position. As they rose, Elias felt the first traces of the nanophages against his exposed skin, a slight tingling sensation, not yet painful but a reminder of the countdown that had begun. The Worldbreaker came into view, hanging in the upper atmosphere like an artificial moon. It was massive, at least 3 kilometers across, its surface a complex maze of mechanical components and what appeared to be organic tissue, pulsing with an unhealthy golden light. From its underside, a constant stream of golden particles, the nanophages, flowed downward, spreading across the planet below. Defensive systems activating, warned one of the strike team through the weave. Energy readings spiking. Disperse, Elias commanded. Multiple approach vectors, just as planned. The dragons broke formation, spreading out to approach the Worldbreaker from different directions. Almost immediately, the massive construct responded, firing energy beams at the nearest dragons. They dodged with impressive agility, weaving patterns in the sky designed to confuse the targeting systems. Elias took advantage of the distraction, flying directly toward the Worldbreaker's underside where the nanophage dispersal units were located. His smaller size compared to the full Draconin made him a less obvious target, and his hybrid energy signature seemed to confuse the automated defenses. He reached the outer hull without being targeted directly, though he had to dodge several beams aimed at nearby dragons. Up close, the Worldbreaker was even more disturbing. Its surface a grotesque blend of metallic components and what looked like living tissue, pulsating beneath transparent panels. I'm in position, he communicated through the weave. Preparing to breach. Grasping the void spear with both hands, Elias channeled his newly ascended energy through it. The weapon responded, its tip glowing with a dark radiance that seemed to bend light around it. With a precise, powerful thrust, he drove the spear into the hull. The barrier, designed to withstand conventional weapons and energy attacks, offered little resistance to the ancient Draconin weapon. It parted like cloth, creating an opening large enough for Elias to slip through. Inside, the Worldbreaker was a nightmare landscape of pulsing organic corridors interwoven with mechanical components. The air was thick with nanophages, and Elias could feel them beginning to attack his armor, seeking ways to penetrate to the biological material beneath. I'm inside, he reported, proceeding to the central core. His ascended senses guided him through the labyrinthine interior. He could feel the pulse of the Worldbreaker's quasi-consciousness, not truly sentient, but a complex biological computer capable of carrying out its programmed directives with frightening efficiency. The central core was a massive chamber at the heart of the construct. Here, the separation between mechanical and biological components broke down entirely. What Elias saw was a grotesque hybrid, a massive brain-like structure wired directly into the Worldbreaker's systems, pulsing with the same sickly golden light that permeated the entire construct. "I've found the biological core," he communicated, preparing to establish weave connection. Elias approached the pulsating mass cautiously. As he drew closer, Tendrils of energy reached out from the core, sensing his presence. The World Breaker was aware of him now, recognizing him as a threat. Defensive systems within the chamber activated. Mechanical arms tipped with cutting tools descended from the ceiling. Energy fields began to form, attempting to isolate and contain him. Elias moved with the enhanced speed and agility granted by his ascension, dodging the mechanical arms and leaping through the energy fields before they could fully form. Reaching the core, he thrust the void spear directly into its center. The connection was immediate and overwhelming. The World Breaker's quasi-consciousness flooded into his mind, alien, cold, methodical. It tried to overwhelm him, to subsume his identity within its programmed directives. But Elias was ready. Opening himself fully to the weave, he created a channel between the World Breaker and the waiting minds of the Draconin Strike team. Now, he commanded through the weave. All of you, focus through me. The combined consciousness of 12 powerful Draconin warriors poured through Elias into the World Breaker's biological core. The alien construct had no defenses against such an assault. It had been designed to resist physical attacks, energy weapons, even conventional telepathic probes. But the weave was something else entirely, a collective consciousness greater than the sum of its parts, guided by Elias's hybrid perspective. The World Breaker's systems began to falter. The golden light pulsing through its organic components flickered and dimmed. The mechanical arms twitched erratically, then fell still. The energy fields collapsed. And then, unexpectedly, Elias sensed something else within the World Breaker, a deeper presence hiding behind the quasi-consciousness of the construct itself. Architect, he realized with shock. There's an architect consciousness embedded in the control systems. The presence turned its attention to him, cold and ancient and filled with contempt. Abomination. It communicated, not in words but in concepts that burned themselves into Elias's mind. Neither dragon nor human. A mistake to be corrected. A bridge between worlds, Elias countered, maintaining his sense of self against the overwhelming alienness of the architect consciousness. Something you never anticipated. Something you fear. Fear. The concept was dismissive, almost amused. The architects do not fear. We order. We arrange. We perfect. Aberrations like you disrupt the pattern. Through the connection, Elias glimpsed the truth behind the architects, a species so ancient they had forgotten their own beginnings. A species that had appointed itself the caretakers of galactic civilization, deciding which species would rise and which would fall, which would be guided and which would be eliminated, all in service to some grand design that even they no longer fully understood. You fear change, Elias insisted. You fear what you cannot control. The Draconin. Humanity. Me. The architect presence recoiled slightly, and Elias knew he had struck a nerve. Your species are chaotic elements, it communicated. Unpredictable. Dangerous. The pattern requires stability. The pattern requires growth, Elias countered. Evolution. Adaptation. Things you abandoned eons ago. He pushed harder through the weave connection, forcing the architect consciousness to experience the full spectrum of his hybrid existence. The human perspective blended with Draconin power, the unique viewpoint that came from straddling two worlds. The architect recoiled further, its presence wavering under the assault of concepts it had never experienced, never contemplated. This ends now, Elias declared, gathering his strength and the power of the Draconin flowing through him. The World Breaker. The nanophages. Your interference with both our species. It ends. With a final, tremendous effort, Elias channeled the combined will of the Draconin Strike team directly into the architect consciousness. The alien mind, powerful as it was, had no defense against such an unprecedented attack. It fractured, then dissolved, its connection to the World Breaker severed completely. Without the guiding intelligence of the architect, the World Breaker's systems began to shut down. The flow of nanophages from its dispersal units slowed, then stopped entirely. The golden light faded from its organic components, replaced by the dull gray of dead tissue. Elias withdrew the void spear from the core, severing the connection. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him, but he forced himself to move, to make his way back through the now dormant corridors of the massive construct. His armor was showing signs of degradation from the nanophages, patches dissolving to reveal the scaled skin beneath. The tingling sensation had become painful, a burning that suggested the nanophages were beginning to affect him despite his hybrid resilience. He reached the breach point where he had entered and launched himself back into open air. His wings, partially damaged by the nanophages, struggled to support him, but he managed to glide away from the now-dead world breaker. The strike team dragons converged around him, supporting him as his strength failed. "It's done," he communicated weakly through the weave. "The world breaker is neutralized. The architect connection is broken." They began the descent back to the surface, back to the mountain city where Melora and the others waited. As they flew, Elias noticed something strange in the atmosphere, a distortion, a ripple in space that reminded him of the fold. "What is that?" he asked, directing the thought to Terex, who flew closest to him. The emerald-scaled dragon looked where he indicated, his golden eyes widening in surprise. "Ships," he replied. "Many ships. But not Vex. Not Architect. Something else." As they descended further, the distortion resolved into clarity. Dozens of vessels were emerging from what appeared to be jump points in the space above Proxima b, vessels of various designs, but all bearing the unmistakable hallmarks of human construction. "Earth," Elias whispered in amazement. They got the message. They came. The lead ship was massive, a capital vessel that dwarfed the colony ships that had brought the original settlers to Proxima b. As Elias and the strike team approached the mountain city, they could see more ships descending, taking up positions around the planet. Melora met them at the entrance to the city, her expression a mixture of relief and amazement. "You succeeded," she said as Elias landed unsteadily before her. "The world breaker is neutralized, and it seems your other plan bore fruit as well." They received the message, Elias confirmed, his voice weak from the effects of the nanophages. Earth responded. More than responded, Draconis added, joining them. "According to our long-range sensors, they've brought a significant military force. The architect's proxies in the system are retreating." Medics were already attending to Elias and the strike team, applying treatments to counteract the nanophages. Elias felt strength returning as the painful burning sensation began to subside. "We need to establish communication with them," he said, looking up at the ships now visible in the sky even from the ground, "before misunderstandings occur." "Already in progress," Melora assured him. "We've activated the colony's repaired transmitter. They're responding to our signals." Within hours, a delegation from Earth had landed near the mountain city. The humans, officials from Earth's Unified Space Command, along with scientists and diplomats, were understandably cautious, but also curious and determined. They had received Elias's message and, after initial skepticism, had mobilized with impressive speed. The meeting between humans and Draconin took place on the plateau where, 10 years earlier, Elias had witnessed his first battle between the dragons and the Vex. Now, it served as neutral ground for a historic first contact. Elias stood beside Melora as the human delegation approached. He could sense their shock and unease at the sight of the massive dragons, and their even greater shock when they noticed him, clearly neither fully human nor fully alien. The leader of the Earth delegation, a woman with silver-streaked black hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command, stepped forward. "I am Admiral Helena Chun of the Earth Alliance," she announced. "We received your message about the threat to both our worlds. We've come to offer assistance and to learn more about this enemy." Melora inclined her head in acknowledgement. "I am Melora, Queen of the Draconin. Your arrival is most welcome, though I admit to surprise at your numbers and your speed." "Your message was persuasive," Admiral Chun replied, her eyes moving to Elias. "Particularly the parts about this architects group and their plans for Earth. Our analysts believe they've been interfering in our development for centuries without our knowledge." "They have," Elias confirmed, speaking for the first time. His voice, deeper and more resonant since the ascension, nevertheless retained enough humanity to be recognizable as such. "The architects see themselves as the shapers of galactic civilization. They guide some species, eliminate others, all according to a pattern only they fully understand." Admiral Chin studied him with intense curiosity. "And you are?" "My name is Elias Mercer," he replied. "I was born on Earth, raised on the Proxima b colony. I was the only survivor of the Vex attack 10 years ago. Recognition flashed in the Admiral's eyes. "Mercer, we have records of the colony's personnel. Your parents were Doctors Thomas and Lydia Mercer, geologists." "Yes," Elias confirmed, a pang of old grief surfacing briefly. "After the attack, the Draconin found me. They took me in. When their royal heir was lost, Queen Melora adopted me to take its place." The Admiral's expression registered shock, quickly controlled. "I see. And this transformation was necessary for me to fulfill that role," Elias explained. "I am neither fully human nor fully Draconin now, but something in between. A bridge between our species." Another member of the human delegation, a woman in scientific attire, stepped forward. "The physiological implications are extraordinary," she said, her voice tinged with excitement despite the gravity of the situation. "A successful hybrid between such different species is not a laboratory specimen," Melora interrupted firmly. "Eliasarin is my son and heir to the Draconin throne. He is also, I believe, the reason our species have a chance to work together against the architects." Admiral Chen nodded, acknowledging the rebuke. "Of course. Forgive Dr. Kapoor's enthusiasm. We have much to learn from each other." She turned her attention back to Elias. "The message you sent mentioned an imminent threat. A world breaker?" "Neutralized," Elias said with quiet pride, "shortly before your arrival. Though the architects will undoubtedly send more once they realize this one has failed. Then we have a common enemy," Admiral Chen concluded. "The question is, where do we go from here?" The discussions that followed lasted for days. Earth representatives were given tours of the Draconin city, learning about their technology, their culture, their history. The Draconin, in turn, learned about humanity's progress in the years since the colony's destruction, their expansion through the solar system, their developing technologies, their political structures. Throughout it all, Elias served as intermediary, his unique perspective helping to bridge misunderstandings and facilitate communication. His hybrid nature, once seen as a liability by some of the Draconin Council, proved invaluable in forging the alliance between the two species. 1 week after the Earth fleet's arrival, a formal treaty was signed. Earth and the Draconin would stand together against the architects, sharing technology, knowledge, and military resources. Proxima B would become a joint colony, a symbol of cooperation between the two species. As for Elias, his position was unique. Officially recognized by both Earth and the Draconin as a diplomatic liaison with full powers of both governments, he found himself in the unprecedented role of belonging fully to both worlds while being apart from each. On the evening after the treaty signing, Elias stood once more on the high balcony where he had spoken with Draconis before his ascension. The stars seemed brighter somehow, the future less uncertain. Melora joined him, her massive form settling beside his with familiar ease. "You have achieved something remarkable," she said. "Something I did not foresee when I chose you 10 years ago." "What was that?" Elias asked. "I thought I was securing the future of the Draconin by adopting a human child," she explained. "I never imagined that child would secure the future of both our species." Elias smiled, the expression strange on his transformed face, but genuine nonetheless. "I was just a survivor," he said. "In the right place at the right time." "You were more than that," Melora disagreed gently. "You were the bridge we needed, the connection between two worlds that might otherwise have remained separate, perhaps even become enemies." They stood in companionable silence, watching as an Earth shuttle departed the plateau below, rising toward one of the orbiting ships. New colonists would be arriving soon, humans coming to rebuild what had been lost and to learn from the Draconin. And Draconin would be venturing to Earth as ambassadors, scholars, teachers. "The architects will not accept this alliance easily," Elias said after a time. "They'll try again, with greater force. And we will be ready," Melora replied confidently. Together, Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The road ahead would not be easy. The architects had resources beyond imagination, influence throughout the galaxy, and the weight of eons behind their convictions. But they had never faced an alliance like this, dragons and humans, united by a common thread and an uncommon bridge between them. He spread his wings, fully healed now from the nanophage damage, their opalescent surfaces catching the light of Proxima Centauri. He was neither what he had been born as nor what tradition would have made him. He was something new, something unique. And perhaps, he thought as he looked out at the stars where the architects waited, that was exactly what was needed. Not just power, but perspective. Not just strength, but understanding. Not just defense, but vision. The architects believe they know the pattern of the universe, he said quietly. We're going to show them how wrong they are. Melora's mental laugh was warm with approval. Yes, my son, that we will. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.